My mom poisoned me for months to keep me from having kids, then blamed my husband for it. At her party, I stood up and showed everyone what was really inside those pills. Can you even imagine looking into the eyes of your own mother, the woman who gave you life, and realizing she's been systematically poisoning you for years, all to destroy your deepest dream? Because that's my story. And, trust me, it's a story about the kind of betrayal that rips your world apart, only to rebuild it stronger than you ever thought possible. So, picture this. It's a typical gray Seattle morning, the kind where the mist just clings to everything, and I'm walking into this fertility clinic. The smell of artificial lavender and sanitizer practically assaults me, a scent I'd come to dread after 2 years of soul-crushing appointments. Santiago, my rock, squeezed my hand as we sank into those familiar blue chairs, waiting for answers that never, ever satisfied. Mrs. Brooks. The nurse appeared, her smile a little too practiced, a little too clinically compassionate. Dr. Richard will see you now. That walk to his office felt longer each time, my heels clicking a rhythm that matched the frantic beat of my heart. Santiago, bless his heart, walked half a step behind, his breathing controlled, the way it always is when he's bracing for bad news. Dr. Richard didn't even stand when we entered. His eyes were glued to his computer screen, the cold blue light reflecting off his wire-rimmed glasses. When he finally looked up, I knew. I just knew. I've reviewed all your tests, Mrs. Brooks. He took off his glasses, pinching the bridge of his nose. There's no clear medical reason why you haven't conceived. My hands started to tremble. The room literally shrank around me, my throat constricting as if something physical was lodged there. I blinked rapidly, trying to stop the tears, but my vision was already blurring. But that can't be right, Santiago burst out, his voice unnaturally high. We've been trying for 5 years. Dr. Richard just gave us that typical, detached medical answer. Sometimes there are factors we can't identify through testing. His voice just faded into background noise as I stared at the diplomas behind his head, counting them to keep from falling apart. 5 years of marriage, 5 successful bakeries across King County, 5. That number kept popping up in my life, everywhere except where it mattered most. I watched Santiago's face fall, the reality absorbing into his skin. His shoulders curved forward, protective and utterly defeated all at once. I felt like I was floating above the scene, just watching us from a distance. What about IVF? He asked, throwing out the question we'd discussed in whispered, desperate conversations after midnight. The doctor launched into a spiel about options, probabilities, costs, a blur of numbers and percentages that sounded less like medicine and more like gambling odds. My body, the one that could lift 50-pound bags of flour and power through 14-hour baking shifts, had failed at its most basic biological function. The irony was a cruel joke. I'd built a business empire of vanilla bean scones and artisan coffee, while my womb remained stubbornly, humiliatingly empty. I could create the perfect croissant, but not the perfect child. Valentina. Santiago's voice finally pulled me back from the brink. Both men were staring at me, waiting for a response to a question I hadn't even heard. I need some air, I managed to croak, my voice sounding foreign even to my own ears. The drive home? Silence. A heavy, suffocating silence. Seattle's skyline was a blur, either from the rain or my unshed tears. I couldn't even tell anymore. Santiago kept both hands on the wheel, his knuckles white with tension. I just stared out the window, watching mothers push strollers under awnings, shielding their babies from the drizzle. My mind drifted back to Santiago proposing on Alki Beach, the water glittering behind him, promising a house full of children with my eyes. That memory felt like it belonged to someone else now, someone whose future wasn't crumbling around her. At a red light, the first tears broke through my carefully constructed composure. Santiago reached over, his hand covering mine, warm, solid. It anchored me, a silent reminder that I wasn't drowning alone. "It's not over," he whispered, but the strain in his voice betrayed his own doubt. I wiped my cheeks quickly as the light changed. There must be something we're missing, I said, my analytical mind already searching for solutions, alternatives, anything to fix this problem, just like I'd fixed every other obstacle in my life. Have you ever felt your body betrayed you, despite doing everything right? By the time we pulled up to our craftsman home in Queen, Anne, that silence between us had hardened into something brittle and dangerous. Santiago tossed his keys into the ceramic bowl I'd made during a pottery class we took last winter. Another attempt, to reduce stress and just relax, as everyone kept advising. I headed straight for the kitchen, my sanctuary. The familiar motions of measuring flour and sugar might calm me where words failed. But Santiago followed, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood floors. Maybe if you hadn't opened the 5th location. He finally said, the words bursting from him like steam from a pressure cooker. The doctor said stress that's not fair. I set down the measuring cup with deliberate, forced control. You supported that decision. You helped me find the Ballard location. I supported you because I thought once we had the chain established, you'd slow down. He ran his hands through his hair, leaving it standing in dark spikes. My parents keep asking when we're going to give them grandchildren. My mother called again yesterday. And there it was. The suffocating weight of his family's expectations crushing us both. The Santiago legacy that must continue. The grandchildren his parents felt entitled to. The subtle comments about how his cousins had all started families while we focused on that bakery business. I need time to process this before we discuss next steps, I said, turning away, opening the refrigerator to hide my expression. We've been processing for years now, Val. His voice cracked, betraying the raw pain beneath his frustration. At what point do we accept that this might not happen for us? The question hung between us like a guillotine blade. Our marriage, our future family, my very sense of self-worth, all balanced precariously beneath it. I'm going to lie down, I said, abandoning my baking plans. The thought of our marital bed, the place where we'd tried and failed so many times to create life, made my stomach turn. I'll use the spare room. I was halfway up the stairs when the phone rang. Santiago answered, his voice immediately shifting into a more pleasant register. After a brief conversation, he called up to me. Your mother's coming over. Says she's bringing comfort food and motherly advice. 20 minutes later, I reluctantly opened the door to find Olive, my mother, standing on our porch, her face perfectly composed with practiced sympathy, a casserole dish in her hands. Her cream-colored cardigan was perfectly pressed, not a single strand of her highlighted hair out of place. You look exhausted, sweetheart. Her eyes assessed me with the cold calculation of a jeweler appraising damaged goods. Let me take care of you. I just stepped back to let her in, too drained to refuse the intrusion. Santiago appeared in the hallway, relief washing over his face at the sight of her. Thank God you're here, Olive, he said, taking the casserole. Maybe you can talk some sense into her. My mother positioned herself between us, her hand resting on my lower back with just enough pressure to guide me toward the kitchen. A mother knows what her daughter needs. She moved through my kitchen with familiar efficiency, putting on the kettle for tea while Santiago set the table. I watched as she added honey to my steaming mug, then pulled a small bottle from her purse. A few drops of my special chamomile tincture, she explained, measuring the liquid carefully. It always helped you sleep as a child. I accepted the cup from her hands, completely unaware of what it truly contained, feeling the warmth spread through my fingers as Olive and Santiago exchanged concerned glances over my head. 3 weeks after that devastating fertility clinic visit, I was moving mechanically through my kitchen, measuring flour for a test batch of cardamom buns. The scale showed perfect precision, unlike my life, which had completely tilted off its axis. My mother materialized in the doorway, that practiced smile affixed to her face, a small paper bag clutched in her manicured hands. Good morning, sweetheart. She placed the bag on the counter, unwrapping her cashmere scarf. I brought you something special. I brushed flour from my hands, watching as she extracted a bottle of vitamins identical to the others she'd delivered since that first night. The label read Natural Fertility Support, with elegant cursive beneath, promising hormone balance. These have worked wonders for my friend Barbara's daughter, Olive explained, unscrewing the cap with an air of authority. 3 children after 5 years of trying. She tapped 2 pills into her palm, extending her hand expectantly. I swallowed the bitter tablets with a glass of water while she watched, her eyes tracking my throat as I gulped them down. Her smile widened slightly before she turned to prepare coffee. "Have you been taking them regularly?" she asked, though she knew the answer. She'd been here every morning, replacing the bottle before it emptied, monitoring my compliance with the dedication of a prison warden. "Yes, Mom." My voice sounded distant, even to my own ears. Santiago entered, kissing my cheek before nodding to my mother. "Olive, you're an angel for helping us through this." His gratitude stung. He genuinely believed she was supporting us, unaware of the cold calculation behind her kindness. The doorbell rang. It was Andrea, my sister, bouncing in, carrying pastries from a competitor bakery. The nerve. I noticed how her eyes flicked to the vitamin bottle, then to our mother, a silent communication passing between them. "Just checking on my big sister," Andrea said, hugging me with artificial enthusiasm. "Mom's been so worried about you." "I'm fine," I replied automatically, though I absolutely wasn't. Strange symptoms had surfaced in recent days, an unusual fatigue dragging at my limbs, mood swings that left Santiago utterly bewildered, and most disturbingly, coarse dark hair appearing on my jawline where none had existed before. As I moved to put away ingredients, a memory surfaced. Last Thanksgiving. I'd caught fragments of a conversation through the kitchen door as I returned with dessert plates. My mother's voice, urgent and low, "If she has kids, we'll lose her forever. That man will take her completely." Andrea's hesitant response. My father's rumbling agreement. I dismissed it then as typical family possessiveness, but now. "You look tired," my mother observed, her tone suggesting concern while her eyes assessed. "Perhaps you should take a day off. The bakeries can run themselves occasionally." The business meeting that afternoon proved her right, though not in the way she intended. My concentration fractured during profit projections. When my financial director asked a simple question about the new location's timeline, tears sprang to my eyes without warning. My staff exchanged worried glances as I excused myself to the bathroom. In the mirror, a stranger stared back, my jawline squarer, a shadow of facial hair despite aggressive waxing yesterday. My voice had cracked twice during the presentation, dropping to a register I didn't recognize. That evening, Santiago created distance between us on the couch, his body angled away as we watched the news. When I reached for his hand, he squeezed mine briefly before finding an excuse to check email in the other room. Intimacy had dwindled to polite kisses and separate sides of the bed. My mother arrived the next morning with fresh vitamins and knowing eyes. She moved through my kitchen with familiar efficiency, preparing tea with honey while I slumped at the island counter. "Some women aren't meant to be mothers," she said casually, sliding the steaming mug toward me. "Your business is your baby. Some women choose career over family. There's no shame in that." The words echoed earlier sentiments she'd expressed throughout my life. When I wanted to pursue culinary school instead of business administration, when I married Santiago despite her disapproval, when we opened the 5th location rather than starting fertility treatment sooner. "Why do I feel worse after starting these vitamins?" I asked, watching her face carefully. A flicker of something crossed her expression. Satisfaction? Concern? It disappeared too quickly to identify. "Hormones take time to balance," she replied smoothly. "Trust the process. Trust the process. Trust." The word rang hollow as I examined our relationship through this new lens. The controlling advice presented as maternal wisdom, the subtle undermining disguised as support, the constant presence in my adult life, always steering, always watching. 2 days later, I stood before the bathroom mirror again, unable to ignore the changes anymore. My voice had deepened noticeably. Muscle mass had increased across my shoulders, despite missing workouts. Angry acne erupted along my jawline like a teenager's. Something was profoundly wrong, and the timing coincided precisely with my mother's. Special vitamins. From the hallway, I overheard Andrea's voice drifting from the guest room phone. "Mom, she's asking questions about the pills." I froze, listening intently. Your sister built a life that doesn't include us, my mother responded, her voice tinny through the speakerphone. These pills will keep it that way. My lungs constricted. Andrea sighed heavily. Mom, what if this damages her health permanently? Better than losing her to some baby and that husband, Olive snapped. Once the marriage collapses, she'll come back to us completely. Dad says we should ease up, Andrea murmured. Your mother knows best, my father's voice interjected distantly. Stay out of women's business. The pieces aligned with sickening clarity, my family's persistent financial dependence on my success, their resentment of Santiago, their constant maneuvering to remain central in my life. This wasn't just casual interference. This was calculated destruction of my fertility, my marriage, my autonomy. I slipped into our bedroom, hands trembling as I dialed a number I hadn't called in months. Dr. Sandra Wilson's office. A receptionist answered. This is Valentina Brooks, I said, my voice cracking. I need to speak with Dr. Sandra immediately. It's urgent. 20 minutes later, I was explaining my symptoms to my longtime OB/GYN, the one doctor I'd trusted since college. Something isn't right, Dr. Sandra. I need comprehensive hormone testing. She listened without interruption, her professional demeanor slipping only when I described the changes in my voice and appearance. These symptoms aren't consistent with stress alone, she said finally, writing orders for extensive blood work. When did they start? About 3 weeks ago, when my mother started bringing me special prenatal vitamins. Dr. Sandra's pen paused mid-prescription. Bring those vitamins next time. I want to look at them. For the first time in weeks, hope fluttered in my chest, not for pregnancy, but for answers. As she scheduled expedited testing, I realized I was no longer facing this mystery alone. That evening, when Olive brought my nightly dose, I palmed the pills instead of swallowing them. Later, I hid the bottle in my sock drawer. The war for my body had begun, and I finally understood the battleground. 3 days later, Dr. Sandra's office felt different. Less clinical, more like a sanctuary of truth. Her dark wooden desk held a manila folder. Test results that would finally explain why my body had betrayed me. Seattle rain tapped against the window, a gentle metronome counting the seconds until my life changed forever. These numbers are concerning, Valentina. Dr. Sandra removed her glasses, rubbing the bridge of her nose. Your testosterone levels are dangerously high, well above the normal range for women. My throat tightened. But how? I haven't taken any supplements except the prenatal vitamins your mother gave you. Dr. Sandra opened the folder wider, sliding a paper toward me. I had the lab analyze them. These aren't prenatal vitamins at all. They contain testosterone derivatives typically used by bodybuilders. The room tilted sideways. I gripped the armrests of my chair, steadying myself as the pieces clicked into terrible, horrifying focus. The bottle was always replaced before I could buy more, I whispered, my voice sounding foreign. Mom would show up with a new bottle just as the old one was running low. Dr. Sandra nodded, her eyes reflecting a mixture of professional concern and personal outrage. When did your symptoms begin? 3 weeks after Mom started bringing the vitamins. My hands trembled as I traced backward through time, the deeper voice, the unusual hair growth, the mood swings that Santiago attributed to fertility stress. This is medical sabotage, Valentina. Dr. Sandra's voice hardened. These compounds could cause permanent infertility if continued long-term. They're designed to shut down natural hormone production. The truth crashed through me like a wave breaking against jagged rocks. My mother had been poisoning me to prevent me from having children. Dr. Sandra squeezed my hand. We have the evidence now. Blood tests, the contaminated vitamins for lab analysis, your documented symptoms. The power is in your hands. For the first time in months, clarity replaced confusion. Knowledge replaced helplessness. I sat straighter, my mind shifting from victim to strategist. What do we do next? I asked, surprised by the steadiness in my voice. First, we document everything. Then we focus on healing your body. Dr. Sandra began writing in my chart. And you decide how to handle your mother. Traffic lights blurred as I drove home, but my thoughts had never been clearer. The betrayal burned in my chest, a fire that didn't consume but illuminated. I rehearsed what I would say, how I would watch her face when confronted with the truth. Santiago's car wasn't in the driveway, but my mother's silver Lexus gleamed in the afternoon. Perfect. I needed to face her alone first. The house smelled of garlic and olive oil. My mother was cooking dinner in my kitchen, playing the role of supportive parent. She smiled when I entered, wiping her hands on a dish towel. A new vitamin bottle sat on the counter beside a glass of water, ready for my daily dose of poison. "You're home early, sweetheart." Her voice carried the familiar cadence of maternal concern. "I thought we'd surprise Santiago with your favorite lasagna." I set my purse on the counter, removing the lab results without a word. "Mom, what exactly is in these vitamins you've been giving me?" Her smile remained fixed, practiced. "Just folic acid, iron, all the usual prenatal ingredients. My friend Janet gave them to me when her daughter was trying to conceive." I nodded, letting her finish the lie before responding. "That's interesting, because Dr. Sandra found testosterone in them." I slid the lab report toward her. "Enough to prevent pregnancy permanently." For just one heartbeat, her mask slipped. Panic flashed across her face, a momentary crack in her performance, before she recovered with a practiced laugh. "That doctor is clearly mistaken." She pushed the paper away without reading it. "I got these from my friend whose daughter had 3 children after taking them. Why would I give you something harmful?" I picked up the vitamin bottle, studying the professional-looking label that concealed the poison within. My voice remained calm, my newfound power radiating through the kitchen. "I've stopped taking them, and I won't be taking any more help from you. Valentina, you're stressed." She stepped toward me, hands outstretched. "The fertility treatments are making you hormonal, imagining things. These conspiracy theories. I think you should leave now." I moved toward the door, holding it open. "But the lasagna." "Leave. Now." Her face hardened, the nurturing mother vanishing completely. "You're making a mistake. I'm only trying to help you." The sound of keys in the front door interrupted us. Santiago stepped into the foyer, confusion spreading across his face as he took in the scene, my mother gathering her purse, my rigid stance by the open door. "What's happening?" he asked. "Your wife is having some kind of breakdown," my mother said, voice quivering with manufactured concern. "I'm worried about her, Santiago. Call me later." I remained silent until her car disappeared down the street, the tension in my shoulders easing slightly as distance grew between us. "Val?" Santiago touched my arm cautiously. "What's going on?" I led him to the kitchen table, placing the lab results and medical report before him. My hands shook, but my voice remained steady. "My mother has been poisoning me." His eyes widened in disbelief as he scanned the document. "This can't be right. Your mother wouldn't do this. There must be a mistake." The phone rang before I could respond. I answered on speaker. "Valentina? It's Dr. Sandra again." The laboratory called again as a confirmation with the final analysis of those pills. They confirmed high levels of testosterone derivatives, deliberately compounded to appear like prenatal supplements. Santiago's face drained of color as he listened, horror dawning in his eyes. "We need to call the police," he whispered, reaching for my hand. I squeezed his fingers. "Not yet. We need to understand the full scope first." Andrea's involved too. She always called before Mom visited. Dr. Sandra's voice came through the speaker. "Document everything. I'll testify if needed." "And Valentina? Start the hormone therapy we discussed immediately. The sooner we counteract the effects, the better." After the call ended, Santiago pulled me into his arms. I felt his tears warm against my neck as he held me. "I'm so sorry," he whispered. "I had no idea." I thought. "You weren't meant to know." I closed my eyes, letting myself be held. None of us were. We stood locked together in the kitchen, both crying at the magnitude of betrayal. The truth had severed family bonds, but strengthened our marriage in ways I couldn't yet measure. That night, as Santiago slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling, my analytical mind already forming a plan. If I could discover this truth, what else might I uncover? The poisoning had ended, but this was just the beginning. Have you ever caught someone you trusted in a blatant lie, and it makes you question everything? I pinned the last lab report to my evidence board, stepping back to survey what now covered an entire wall of my flagship bakery's office. My fingertips brushed against the glossy surface of a photograph. Olive, my mother, smiling while handing me a pill at Sunday dinner. The image made my stomach clench. 2 weeks had passed since I confronted her. The cold objectivity I'd cultivated felt like armor protecting the raw emotions underneath. Your hormone levels are improving, but recovery will take months, Dr. Sandra said, placing another medical report in my outstretched hand. The good news is that your fertility should return once the testosterone clears your system completely. I tacked the report beneath the others, creating a chronological map of the poisoning. Santiago sat at my desk, a legal pad covered in his precise handwriting. According to these precedents, he said, looking up from his laptop, this could be classified as assault or poisoning under Washington state law. The intentional nature makes it a felony. I nodded, analyzing the pattern taking shape before me. Andrea always called before Olive visited. Every single time. I marked the dates with a red pen. This was too organized for one person alone. Dr. Sandra studied the board, her professional detachment giving way to genuine anger. The consistency suggests premeditation. These weren't just opportunistic moments. Santiago stood beside me, our shoulders touching. What's our next step? We need to know who else is involved, I said, my voice steadier than I felt. And we need to prove conspiracy beyond reasonable doubt. The words tasted clinical on my tongue, but the strategy felt right. This wasn't about an emotional confrontation anymore. This was about comprehensive justice. Later that evening, Santiago showed me photographs on his camera. Andrea handing packages to Olive outside her house, their heads bent together in conversation. I caught these this morning, he said. She had 3 different bags. One looked like a supplement. I added the images to our growing collection, organizing them by date alongside medical reports Dr. Sandra had helped me obtain. T levels were highest after these delivery dates, I noted, circling a pattern emerging from the data. She was adjusting the dosage. Santiago's jaw tightened. We need to protect your business assets too. If they're willing to do this, they might try to claim you're unstable to gain control of the bakeries. The thought sent ice through my veins, but I nodded. I'll call my attorney tomorrow. We'll create a trust they can't touch. While Santiago secured our home, changing locks, installing cameras, recording phone calls, I focused on protecting my business network. I gathered my 5 bakery managers for a confidential meeting. For security reasons, I explained carefully, neither Olive Brooks nor Andrea Brooks should be allowed access to any storage areas or offices. If they visit, please notify me immediately. Questions filled their eyes, but loyalty prevented them from asking. These people had stood beside me through 16-hour openings and Christmas rush disasters. They nodded in unison. We've got your back, Val, Marcus, my longest-serving manager, assured me. At home, I established a secure location for all evidence. Pill containers stored in sealed bags with dates and times labeled in permanent marker. Voice recordings backed up to 3 different locations. Legal documents organized by potential court relevance. How would you gather evidence against someone who betrayed you? The question echoed in my mind as I worked through each methodical step. The doorbell rang late Tuesday afternoon while I was reviewing security footage from our home cameras. Santiago answered, his voice carrying down the hallway. She's working. Now isn't a good time, Andrea. My sister's voice replied, pitched higher than normal. Please? I brought a peace offering. Mom doesn't even know I'm here. I switched on my phone's recording app and slid it into my pocket before joining them at the door. It's fine, Santiago, I said, touching his arm gently. Let's hear what she has to say. Andrea held a basket filled with pastries, not from my bakeries, of course. Her eyes started around nervously as she followed me to the kitchen. I thought you might like these, she said, setting the basket down. From that French place you mentioned last Christmas. I poured coffee, watching her reflection in the kitchen window. That's thoughtful. She fidgeted with her bracelet. Mom says you're overreacting to the vitamins. They were just to help you relax, Val. You've been working so hard. I kept my expression neutral, despite the confirmation tightening my chest. Relaxation supplements? containing testosterone. Andrea blinked rapidly. I don't know what was in them. She just said they would help with stress. I sipped my coffee, buying time. And you believe that? We're worried about you, she continued, her voice softening into the tone she used with difficult customers at her boutique. You've been under so much pressure with the fertility treatments. Maybe you're seeing problems that aren't really there. Oh, the implied accusation. Paranoia. Instability. Exaggeration. The very narrative they needed to control me. Some family members are discussing an intervention, she added, her eyes not meeting mine. Just to help you sort through everything that's happening. The threat registered clearly. They were still trying to control the narrative. To question my competence. To undermine everything I'd built. I walked her to the door with practiced pleasantries, my recorder capturing every word. Once she was gone, I replayed the conversation for Santiago, watching his face darken with each implication. They're escalating, he said. I added the recording to our evidence wall, a renewed determination strengthening my resolve. So are we. The district attorney slid my evidence folder back across his mahogany desk 2 days later. Morning light through vertical blinds created prison bar shadows across his face as he leaned forward, elbows planted firmly on the polished surface. Mrs. Brooks, you have enough here for criminal charges. Tampering with medication, reckless endangerment, possibly attempted assault. His voice carried the weight of 20 years prosecuting Seattle's worst. The hormone test results alone would convince most juries. I nodded, feeling oddly calm despite the gravity of his words. Santiago squeezed my hand under the table, his gold wedding band pressing against my skin. What happens after we file? I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. Your mother will be arrested, fingerprinted, likely released on bail pending trial. Andrea too, as an accomplice. He removed his glasses, polishing them with a handkerchief. Family cases are messy. Are you prepared for that? Santiago shifted forward. Whatever Valentina decides, I'm with her. Outside the government building, rain pattered against my umbrella. Seattle weather mirrored my mood, gray, uncertain, but containing purpose within the gloom. I'd spent the past 3 weeks meticulously building my case. Medical records chronologically ordered, recorded conversations with Andrea neatly transcribed, testimony from Dr. Sandra prepared and notarized. You're quiet, Santiago observed, navigating our car through downtown traffic. I'm thinking about my bakery security upgrades. The new key cards arrived yesterday. No one enters without proper clearance now. He nodded, understanding the subtext. My parents had been permanently banned from all 5 locations. My managers knew exactly what to do if they appeared. Dr. Sandra called, he said after a pause, your latest tests show improvement. The testosterone levels are dropping. A small victory. My body had begun the slow process of healing, though Dr. Sandra warned it could be months before my hormones fully normalized. The acne along my jawline had started to fade. My voice had lost some of its unnatural depth. Each symptom's retreat represented one step closer to reclaiming myself. I'm not doing this just for me anymore, I told Santiago as we pulled into our driveway. It's about stopping them permanently. Inside, I checked our new security cameras from my phone. Front door. Back entrance. Garage all clear. Another layer of protection against intrusion. This house used to feel like a sanctuary. Now it was a fortress, requiring constant vigilance. Our therapy sessions had helped process the betrayal, but the fear remained lodged between my shoulder blades like an invisible knife. What mother poisons her own daughter? What sister helps her do it? These questions circled my mind at 3 a.m. when sleep proved elusive. 2 days later, my phone buzzed with Santiago's distinctive ringtone. Strange, he'd just left for the office 20 minutes ago. Santiago? Everything okay? Your father just visited me at work. His voice sounded tight. Controlled. He says Olive is worried about your mental health. The knife between my shoulder blades twisted. What exactly did he say? That you're having a breakdown. That these delusions about your mother poisoning you are symptoms of stress and possible mental illness. Santiago's breathing quickened. He suggested a family meeting to discuss your condition and treatment options. My hands turned cold. The implications crystallized instantly. They were building a case that I was unstable. If they convinced enough people, could they gain control over my medical decisions? Have me declared incompetent to run my business? They're trying to flip the script, I whispered, sinking into a kitchen chair. Make me the crazy one. I told him to leave. Threatened to call security. Santiago paused. Val? They seem desperate. That makes them dangerous. After we hung up, doubt crept in like morning fog. Could I be overreacting? The evidence was substantial. But evidence can be interpreted in different ways. What if? No. I grabbed my phone and called Dr. Sandra. They're saying I'm having a breakdown, I told her after explaining Dylan's visit to Santiago. Her response was immediate and firm. Valentina, your test results don't lie. Trust the evidence. This is classic gaslighting, making you question your own reality. They want a family meeting. Should I go? Absolutely not. Not on their terms. They're accelerating their timeline, which means we need to accelerate ours. Her voice became gentle but urgent. Have you decided how you want to confront them? The plan had been forming gradually, like bread dough rising in the back of my mind. Now it's solidified. Their anniversary party is this Saturday. 80 guests. All their friends. The entire family. A public venue. Smart, Dr. Sandra said. Less chance of them controlling the narrative. They used family gatherings to manipulate me for years. I would use one to expose them. After we hung up, I felt curiously calm. Every piece was positioned. Evidence compiled. Witnesses ready, attorney on standby. Santiago and Dr. Sandra were fully prepared. Even my bakery staff knew their roles if needed. I walked to our bedroom closet, sliding hangers across the rod until I found what I was searching for. Not the floral dress Olive would expect me to wear to her anniversary, but my charcoal power suit with subtle pinstripes. The one I wore to secure financing for my third location. On Saturday, I whispered to my reflection as I held it against my body. Everyone will know exactly who you are. Have you ever had someone try to make you doubt your own reality, only for you to realize they were the ones playing games? On Saturday, I stepped into my parents' grand colonial home in Magnolia, the anniversary banner stretching across the entryway like a false promise. 35 years of love, it proclaimed in golden script, and I fought the urge to tear it down. Santiago's hand found the small of my back, steadying me as we crossed the threshold into the lion's den. You ready for this? He whispered, his breath warm against my ear. As ready as I'll ever be, I replied, smoothing down the lapels of my charcoal suit. The power outfit was a deliberate choice. No soft fabrics or floral patterns tonight. I needed armor. The house buzzed with almost 80 guests, glasses clinking and laughter floating beneath crystal chandeliers that had witnessed decades of family performances. My mother spotted us immediately, her radar for opportunities to control never failing. Valentina. Olive glided toward us in a perfectly tailored plum dress, arms outstretched as if we'd parted on good terms 3 weeks ago. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come. She embraced me, the scent of her Chanel perfume, the same she'd worn since I was a child, momentarily transporting me back to simpler times before I knew the truth. I remained rigid, counting to 3 before stepping back. We wouldn't miss Dad's big speech, I said, my voice carrying the practiced neutrality I'd perfected in business negotiations. Santiago nodded politely. Congratulations on 35 years, Olive. My mother's eyes flicked to him, a flash of calculation visible before her mask of maternal concern returned. You both look tired, especially you, sweetheart. Her fingers brushed my cheek. Still having trouble sleeping? The audacity nearly broke my composure. The testosterone she fed me for months was still disrupting my sleep patterns, a fact Dr. Sandra confirmed last week. Actually, I'm sleeping better than ever, I lied, watching her face for a reaction. Across the room, I spotted Andrea hovering near the bar, her eyes darting between me and our mother. When our gazes locked, she quickly looked away, guilt written in the slump of her shoulders. Santiago followed my line of sight and squeezed my hand. There's Dylan, he said, nodding toward my father, who stood surrounded by his golf buddies, playing the role of jovial host. We made our way through the crowd, accepting congratulations on the new bakery location from family friends who had no idea what was happening beneath the surface of our picture-perfect family. My father's expression tightened when he saw us approaching, his booming laugh cutting off mid-sentence. The successful business owners arrive, he announced too loudly, clapping Santiago on the shoulder with forced camaraderie. My daughter, the bakery queen of Seattle. Congratulations, Dad, I said, allowing a brief hug. 35 years is quite an accomplishment. His eyes carried none of the warmth they held throughout my childhood. Instead, I saw calculation, the same look he gives competitors on the golf course before driving the ball past them. Indeed it is, he agreed, raising his whiskey glass. Family loyalty above all else. That's the secret. The words landed like a threat. I held his gaze, refusing to look away first. If I could have everyone's attention, my father called out suddenly, tapping his glass with a spoon. The party quieted as guests turned toward him. Olive and I want to thank you all for celebrating this milestone with us. My mother materialized at his side, their synchronized movements honed by decades of public performance. But tonight isn't just about our past, Dylan continued, his eyes finding me in the crowd. It's about our future. We have some exciting family business to discuss with our daughter, if you'll excuse us for just a few minutes. My pulse quickened. This wasn't part of their normal script. They were accelerating their timeline. Santiago's hand tightened around mine as my father gestured toward his study. Andrea appeared at my mother's side, her face a mask of conflicted emotions. What's this about, Dad? I asked loudly enough for nearby guests to hear. Just a quick family matter, he responded with a tight smile. Won't take long. I followed them into the bookline study, the room where my father had closed countless business deals over cigars and brandy. The door clicked shut behind us, and I was suddenly 15 again, being lectured about college choices that would keep me close to home. You've been avoiding our calls, my mother began without preamble, perching on the edge of my father's mahogany desk. I wonder why. I responded, standing near the door. Santiago positioned himself beside me, a united front. Andrea hovered near the window, picking at her cuticles the way she did when we were children and in trouble. Val, we're worried about you, she said, her voice soft with practiced concern. That's rich coming from the person who delivered poison to our mother for months. The words flew out sharper than I intended, but I was past caring about social niceties. My father's face darkened. This paranoid behavior has got to stop, Valentina. You're ruining your life with these delusions. Delusions? I repeated, incredulous, despite knowing this would be their strategy. I have blood tests, lab results, and recorded conversations proving exactly what happened. My mother exchanged a glance with my father, some silent communication passing between them. She approached me slowly, hands outstretched in supplication. Sweetheart, we know you're devastated about not being able to conceive, she said, her voice dripping with manufactured sympathy. But blaming others won't change biology. The room suddenly felt too small, too hot. Is that what this is about? You're still using my infertility, the infertility you caused, to manipulate me. Andrea stepped forward. Val, we know Santiago is leaving you. He told us. The words hit me like a physical blow. I turned to Santiago, whose face contorted in shock before hardening into anger. That's a damned lie, he snapped. I've never spoken to any of you alone. He's filing for divorce next week, my father continued as if Santiago hadn't spoken. He wants children, and you can't give him that. He came to us out of respect. My breath caught in my throat. Their audacity was breathtaking, creating fiction to isolate me when I was at my most vulnerable. You'll always have family here, my mother soothed, reaching for my hand. I jerked away from her touch. Even if you can't be a mother, Andrea's voice softened further. If you can't have kids of your own, you can help with mine when the time comes. We'll still be a family. I almost laughed at the absurdity, but there was nothing funny about this calculated cruelty. My father cleared his throat, moving to his desk to retrieve a folder. We've drawn up papers to buy your shares of the bakery, he said, all pretense of concern vanishing. For the family's good. You're not thinking clearly right now. And there it was, the true agenda emerging. This was never about my well-being. It was about reclaiming control over my life and assets, using my infertility as leverage. The door opened behind us and Santiago let out a sound of relief. Dr. Sandra stood in the doorway, precisely on schedule, medical folder in hand. "Sorry I'm late," she said, surveying the room with professional calm. Traffic was terrible. My mother's face paled. "This is a private family meeting." "Then it's fortunate I brought reinforcements," I replied as my bakery manager Ryan appeared behind Dr. Sandra, holding a tablet. I think it's time everyone knew the truth. The door to the study swung wide open as Santiago stepped into the hallway. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced to the curious party guests who had gathered nearby, "my wife has something important to share with all of you." I strode past my stunned family members, my legs steadier than I expected. The evidence folder I'd carried in my bag felt like a weapon now, loaded with truth instead of bullets. My father lunged forward, grabbing my arm. "Valentina, don't do this. Think about your mother's reputation. You should have thought about that before poisoning your daughter." Santiago hissed, removing my father's hand from my arm. As I walked back into the main room, guests parted before me like the Red Sea. I spotted familiar faces, my parents' closest friends, business associates, extended family, all watching with expressions ranging from curiosity to concern. "I apologize for interrupting the celebration," I began, my voice carrying across the now silent room. "But I've recently discovered something that affects not just me, but potentially other women in this community." I nodded to Ryan, who connected his tablet to my parents' large television screen. The medical results appeared, hormonal panels showing testosterone levels far above the normal female range. "For the past year, I've been systematically poisoned by my own family," I continued, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. "These are my blood test results from 3 weeks ago." A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. My mother pushed through to the front, her face contorted with rage and fear. "She's having a breakdown," she shouted, looking desperately at longtime friends for support. "She's always been unstable." Dr. Sandra stepped forward, professional and composed. "I'm Dr. Sandra Wilson, Valentina's OB/GYN for the past 8 years. These test results are accurate and concerning. The levels of testosterone in her system could cause permanent infertility." My father attempted to regain control, his voice booming across the room. "This is a private family matter. We'll handle this at home." But the crowd wasn't dispersing. If anything, more guests pressed forward, watching the drama unfold with horrified fascination. I nodded to Ryan again, and he tapped the screen. Andrea's voice filled the room. "Mom says the vitamins will help you relax. Just take them, Val. We all want what's best for you." Andrea crumpled against the wall, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't know what was in them, I swear," she sobbed. "She just said they would help you focus on family instead of work." The atmosphere in the room shifted palpably. Several of my parents' oldest friends stepped away from them, moving closer to where I stood. Santiago took his place beside me, his hand finding mine in a public declaration of support. "I've seen every piece of evidence," he told the crowd, voice clear and unwavering. "It's all true." My mother made one last desperate attempt, lunging toward the tablet as if she could erase the evidence displayed there. "Turn that off. This is my anniversary party." I met her eyes, seeing not my mother, but a stranger capable of unimaginable cruelty. "I'm not finished," I announced to the riveted audience. "There's more everyone needs to know." I stood in the center of my parents' anniversary party, heart hammering against my ribs as 80 pairs of eyes locked onto me. The projector screen behind me cast a blue glow across the stunned faces of family friends, neighbors, and colleagues who'd known my parents for decades. As I was saying, I continued, my voice steadier than I felt. "This isn't a mental breakdown or a family disagreement. This is methodical poisoning." I clicked to the next slide. A clinical timeline appeared, each date marked with pill bottles, symptoms, and blood test results. For those just joining us, I've been systematically fed testosterone derivatives by my mother for over a year, specifically to prevent me from conceiving a child with my husband. A collective gasp rippled through the room. Dr. Sandra stepped forward, her gray blazer lending authority to her presence. "I've been Valentina's physician for 12 years, she said, addressing the crowd. These levels of testosterone are unprecedented in a woman without a medical condition. The pills Valentina was given could cause permanent infertility, liver damage, and irreversible masculinization. Santiago moved to stand beside me, his hand finding the small of my back. Our marriage nearly collapsed because of this. We blamed each other, ourselves, everything except what was actually happening. I clicked again. The screen showed surveillance footage from our kitchen. There's my mother, Olive, emptying a vitamin bottle and replacing the contents with different pills when she thought no one was watching. This footage was taken weeks ago, I explained. After we became suspicious, we installed cameras. My father, Dylan, stepped forward. "Turn that off immediately." His voice carried the command he'd used my entire life, the tone that always made me shrink back. "Not today." "No." The single word felt like victory on my tongue. I clicked again. Audio crackled through the speakers. "If she has children, we'll lose her forever," my mother's voice said clearly. "These pills will keep it that way." "Mom, what if this damages her health permanently?" Andrea's voice sounded uncertain. "Better than losing her to some baby and that husband." The color drained from Andrea's face as her own voice condemned her. She looked wildly around the room, finding no sympathy. "Mom told me to do it," she wailed. "Just to keep you with us." My mother lunged toward the computer. "She's manipulating these recordings. She's always been unstable." Santiago blocked her path. "Don't touch anything, Olive." My mother spun toward the crowd, her carefully applied makeup cracking as her face contorted. "My daughter is trying to destroy this family. 35 years of marriage, and this is how she repays us." But I could see it in the eyes of the guests. No one believed her. "You were drifting away," she shrieked, abandoning all pretense. "You chose him and that business over family." My father attempted to regain control. "As your father, I demand this stop immediately. This is a private family matter." Santiago stepped forward, his voice vibrating with controlled rage. "You lost the right to demand anything when you poisoned my wife." Mrs. Henderson, my mother's friend of 30 years, approached her with horror etched across her lined face. "How could you do this to your own daughter, Olive?" "You don't understand," my mother pleaded, reaching for Mrs. Henderson's hand. She was slipping away from us. Mrs. Henderson pulled back as if burned. "No parent poisons their child to keep them close. That's not love, that's control." Dr. Michaels, retired physician who'd attended my parents' dinner parties for decades, examined the medical reports I'd distributed. He looked up, face grave. "These testosterone levels are consistent with deliberate hormone manipulation," he announced. "This isn't a misunderstanding, it's medical sabotage." My mother swayed on her feet, clutching at her chest. "You have no right." "The lab results speak for themselves," I cut in, my voice clear and unwavering. Andrea collapsed into a chair, sobbing openly now. "I'm sorry, Valentina. I should have stopped her. I was scared of what would happen if I didn't help." My mother turned to her, fury replacing shock. "Shut up, Andrea." But Andrea kept talking, words tumbling out between sobs. "She said we'd lose everything if you had children. That Santiago would take your money. That we'd never see you again. She made me believe we were protecting you." I watched my mother's face as her remaining support crumbled. The room had shifted. Guests moved physically away from my parents, several coming to stand near me and Santiago. The power dynamic that had controlled my life for 32 years shattered before my eyes. My mother's legs buckled. She grabbed for the nearest table, sending glasses crashing to the floor as she went down. My father rushed to her side, his face twisted with panic. "Someone call an ambulance," he shouted, cradling her head. I stood unmoved, watching the performance. Dr. Sandra knelt beside them, checking my mother's pulse. "It's just a shock," she said after a moment. "Her pulse is strong." I looked down at the woman who gave birth to me, who then spent decades ensuring I couldn't do the same. "You never wanted me happy," I told her quietly. "But today, I take back my life." The sliding doors to the backyard opened. Officer Brennan stepped in, his uniform commanding immediate attention. I received a call about a potential assault case, he said, scanning the room until his eyes landed on me. Officer, I said, I'd like to report a case of poisoning and medical tampering. He nodded, professional and direct. We'll need statements from everyone involved. My mother moaned dramatically from the floor. She's trying to ruin us. After everything we've done for her. The officer remained unmoved. Ma'am, tampering with medication is a felony in Washington state. Depending on intent, you could be looking at charges of assault, reckless endangerment, or attempted grievous bodily harm. Andrea was led to a separate corner by another officer who'd arrived. She went without resistance, tears still streaming down her face. Mrs. Henderson approached me, taking both my hands in hers. I've known your mother for 3 decades, and I never imagined. I'm so sorry, dear. One by one, guests came forward, offering support, confirming they witnessed the evidence, expressing horror at what was done to me. Dr. Sandra spoke quietly with Officer Brennan, her professional demeanor unfaltering. This was calculated medical sabotage. I have documented the effects on her health over the past year. Santiago wrapped his arms around me from behind, his chest warm against my back. You've shown incredible strength today, he whispered against my hair. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt tears prick my eyes, not from fear or anger, but relief. I didn't just want justice for myself, I told him, watching as my mother was helped to a chair, sedated by paramedics while my father hovered uselessly nearby. I wanted to make sure they couldn't hurt anyone else. The evidence boards, the recorded conversations, the medical reports, everything we meticulously prepared had served its purpose. Justice unfolded around us, clinical and procedural, validating months of careful planning. Mrs. Reynolds, who taught me piano as a child, touched my arm. When you're ready, I'd like to be a character witness. What they did to you is unconscionable. I nodded, gratitude washing through me. Thank you. Santiago squeezed my hand. Should we go? I looked around the room one last time, at my mother's collapsed form, my father's bewildered face, my sister's isolation. Then at the circle of support that had formed around us. Dr. Sandra, our friends, even strangers moved by the truth. Yes, I said, let's go home. We walked out together, surrounded by people offering their support. The weight that had pressed on my chest for years had lifted. Whatever legal battles lay ahead, whatever recovery my body still faced, tonight, truth won. I stepped into the cool evening air, a different woman than the one who entered this party 2 hours ago. No longer a victim, but a woman who reclaimed her power, and with it, her future. A week later, the courthouse buzzed with whispered conversations as I sat on the hard wooden bench, my back straight despite the exhaustion pulling at my shoulders. Santiago's hand covered mine, warm and steady, an anchor in the storm we'd weathered together. Across the aisle, Olive sat with her lawyer, her cream-colored cardigan perfectly pressed as always, though her makeup failed to hide the hollow shadows beneath her eyes. The state versus Olive Brooks, the clerk announced, and I felt a surreal disconnect hearing my mother's name followed by criminal charges, reckless endangerment, tampering with a consumer product. Andrea stood separately with her own attorney, her testimony against our mother buying her a reduced charge of aiding and abetting. She caught my eye briefly, then looked away, shoulders curving inward with shame. My father wasn't being prosecuted, not enough evidence, but his absence from the courtroom spoke volumes about his social disgrace. Your Honor, we're prepared to move forward with the civil suit for medical costs and emotional distress, my attorney explained, after the criminal proceedings concluded. The judge nodded, her eyes finding mine with something that looked like respect. Outside, a small crowd of reporters waited. Mrs. Brooks, can you comment on what they're calling the fertility pill tampering case? A journalist called out. Santiago stepped forward protectively, but I touched his arm. This isn't just about me, I told the cameras steadily. It's about every woman's right to make her own reproductive choices. That evening, my phone filled with messages, 3 support groups for reproductive autonomy asking me to speak. 2 bakery locations reporting sales increases as the community rallied around me. Dr. Sandra called with my latest hormone results. The levels are improving with the therapy, she said, her voice warm with more than clinical concern. Your body is resilient, Valentina. For the first time in months, I slept through the night without waking in panic. Santiago's arm draped across my waist, his breath even against my neck. Tomorrow would bring more healing, more rebuilding. But tonight, I rested in the certainty that they could never hurt me or our future children again. The bell above the door of our 6th bakery location chimed as I walked through, 1 year later. Sunlight streamed through the windows, illuminating the fresh paint and gleaming countertops. The scent of vanilla and cinnamon wrapped around me like an old friend. The judge's statement was unequivocal, Santiago said, reading from his phone as he followed me inside. Reproductive rights are inviolable. This was both dangerous and unethical. I nodded, arranging pastries in the display case. 18 months probation and community service seems light for what she did. Plus the $250,000 in damages, he reminded me, and Andrea's probation. The contrast with where I was a year ago felt stark. My confidence had returned along with my health. The hormone levels had normalized. And Dr. Sandra believed fertility treatments had a strong chance of success now. Santiago and I attended therapy together every Tuesday, rebuilding the trust that almost crumbled under the weight of manipulation. We'd established clear boundaries, no contact with Olive or Dylan, and limited, supervised visits with Andrea, who seemed genuinely remorseful. The financial trust is finalized, I told Santiago as we prepared for our staff meeting. No family claims can touch the business assets now. He smiled, the warmth reaching his eyes in a way it couldn't during those dark months. You've thought of everything. Later that week, I spoke at a women's health symposium about medical autonomy. Looking out at the audience of attentive faces, I wondered how many others might be experiencing manipulation disguised as care. How would you rebuild your life after such profound betrayal? The question followed me home, sparking ideas for outreach programs we might support. The hospital room filled with soft morning light 3 years after that first devastating appointment with Dr. Richard. I cradled our newborn daughter against my chest, her tiny hand wrapped around my finger with surprising strength. Santiago sat on the edge of the bed, tears sliding unchecked down his cheeks as he stroked her dark curls. She has your eyes, he whispered, voice breaking with joy, just like I always dreamed. Dr. Sandra checked the monitors one last time before removing her gloves. Your body healed beautifully, Valentina. She's perfect. The door opened softly and Andrea stepped in hesitantly, carrying a small stuffed bear. Her eyes widened at the sight of the baby, and she hung back near the doorway until I gestured her closer. Would you like to meet your niece? I asked, watching her carefully. Can I? Her voice trembled. After everything? You can know her, I said, measuring my words, but trust must be earned back slowly. She nodded, accepting this boundary as she approached. Santiago made space for her to see the baby, his forgiveness coming more slowly than mine. Olive and Dylan chose not to acknowledge the pregnancy or birth, their final rejection of a grandchild they once claimed to desperately want. Their absence felt like freedom rather than loss. I in the quiet afternoon, while Santiago took a call outside and Andrea had gone, I held my daughter up to the window, where light bathed her face. On the windowsill sat a photo of myself at her age, eyes full of possibility before the world taught me caution. Family isn't who shares your blood, I whispered to her. It's who respects your boundaries. Next month, I begin writing a book about my experience. The foundation we established has already helped 3 women recognize and escape reproductive coercion. My daughter will grow up knowing her worth isn't in her womb, but in her whole self, boundaries intact, dreams unfettered. Later, we walked out of the hospital into golden sunshine. Santiago carried the car seat while I held our discharge papers, both of us blinking in the bright light of this new beginning.